The Central Bank of Nigeria's request for the extension of the deadline for swapping of old 1,000, 500 and 200 Naira notes to the redesigned ones. The new deadline is February 10, 2023. A 7-day grace period beginning on February 10 to February 17, 2023 has also been approved to enable Nigerians to deposit their old notes at the CBN after the February deadline, when the old currency would have lost its legal tender status. This followed the president's meeting with the Apex Banks governor, Godwin Emefiele, in his country home in Daura, Katsina State on Sunday. Emefiele briefed correspondents after the meeting, revealing that 75% of the 2.7 trillion naira held outside the banking system has been recovered. Joining us now on the morning show to discuss the CBN's latest development on the extension of the old notes is Professor Segun Ajibola, former president, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. Good morning, Professor Ajibola.
Good morning.
Thank you, Prof, for joining us.
And thank you.
Well, first, what do you think of the extension of the deadline by the Central Bank of Nigeria with regard to the return of the old notes to the CBN vault via the banks? And then the threat by the CBN governor that ICPC, EFCC, other security agencies, and the NFIU will now be monitoring the banks to know which banks are selling notes and punishing customers or are not giving out the new notes to Nigerians. Those two issues, because bankers have been accused of sharp practices beyond the extension.
Yes, thank you very much. The news of the extension is no doubt quite comforting, and I believe to majority of Nigerians, the mass of the people that are largely financially excluded, and they still have to transact commercial business on cash and carry basis. You know, all along, there has been this apprehension that there are so many segments of our society, people in the riverine area, borders, and so on, that do not have access to banks or even banking facilities. And all along have been carrying on their day-to-day livelihood based on cash transactions. So they have complained of inability to access the banks, to change their old Naira notes to new ones, thereby threatening their sources of livelihood and creating a situation where economic lives will be grounded. I think with the extension, there is opportunity for those who are in this category and those who are in urban, semi-urban centers that are also complaining that they've not been able to either change their new Naira notes or get their economic transactions on because of the threat of 31st January. So with the extension, I believe that is opportunity for more Nigerians to now embrace the new normal of changing from the old Naira notes to the new one.
Talking about the new normal.
No, the complicity of the bankers.
Generally, because you asked a question, the threat by the CBN governor to enforce security agencies. Definitely, there is a disconnect somewhere. Because if Central Bank of Nigeria is saying we have released so much in new Naira notes, and banks, even though by reason of tradition, by reason of professional discipline and ethics, banks cannot come out to explain their own side, whether we have received or we have not received. But if Central Bank, the regulator, is saying we have shown out so much, and up till perhaps yesterday evening, I don't know of this morning, some banks are still dispensing old notes, then there is a disconnect somewhere. And Nigerians are saying that these new Naira notes are available under the bridge to be changed at a commission, available in social gatherings. We've seen some trending news about spraying of the new Naira notes at parties and so on. What has happened to that transmission mechanism? Where is the disconnect? So I think the regulator, the operators, still owe us Nigerians a duty of discovering where that disconnect is and to reconnect, so that an exercise that ordinarily should be seamless will then become seamless within the time frame that is now allowed.
All right, thank you. Just two questions to you. The first one is with regards to members of underserved community in the hinterland and rural areas. I would like you to evaluate the CBN's cash swap program. There have been, criticisms in areas where it hasn't quite worked, and some people have praised the effort. I'd like to get your view on this. And then the second part would be how the technological infrastructure required to accommodate this new normal, as you have called it. Over the weekend, when there was a rush for the swap of the old notes and some organizations or businesses were rejecting the use of notes for transactions, it was quite difficult to use alternative payment channels because there were failures in, rates, in the transaction rates. And so it became even more difficult for Nigerians to transact business. Are banks ready to embrace this cashless society and this push for the CBN for a reduction in the use of notes?
If there is anything that is a major takeaway from this exercise, is the fact that as a country, as an industry, we still have a lot to do in terms of financial deepening and financial inclusion. The available statistics show that barely 50% of Nigerians in the age of maybe working age from 18 and above, barely 50% of the population are financially included as of today, which means about half of the population that should be financially inclusive are still excluded. And that is one of the reasons why there has been so much pressure. If majority of Nigerians have embraced financial inclusion as a way of life, we won't have the kind of pressure we have been going through in terms of the stampede to change from the old Naira notes to the new Naira notes, because the Naira notes won't have any reason being stockpiled in the homes, in offices, and so on. So we need to reevaluate. There was Financial System Strategy 2020. So we need to reevaluate to see how we can drive financial inclusion in this environment, so that whenever this kind of exercise is coming on, we won't have this kind of stampede again. Now, about the cash swap, there is limits to what the central bank can do, even the banks, to swap cash, the old Naira note for the new Naira notes, within the space of time that we've been talking about until this recent extension. Because you know our population and you know the concentration, where we have this concentration of cash and the desperation to change. Let me share you an interesting episode. Somebody who has been working in my farm in Ekiti State asked me to send to them, a number of them, transport fare to move from somewhere in Okeogun to Ekiti State. I sent them, they went to POS, they withdrew the old Naira notes. The drivers, commercial drivers, refused to take the old Naira notes from them. Meanwhile, no new Naira notes. For over 1 week now, they are stuck there. The POS refusing to accept the old Naira notes which they dispense to them, refusing to accept back because they said they won't even have the new Naira notes to replace. Drivers refusing, commercial driver refusing to take it. I'm stuck in Ekiti, in my farm. The manager is stuck there. The workers, they are stuck in Okeogun. Where is the disconnect? So the pressure for the swap is not something that is easy to manage within hours, within days. And like I said, with the efforts of the regulators, we need to know where the disconnect is. So if there is need, and how is this new Naira note getting to under the bridge, getting to social gathering? So if there is need to enforce security agencies, I will agree with central bank to fish out where the disconnect is and impose necessary sanctions, because that will be sabotage, economic sabotage for that matter. But like I said, we've heard from central bank, we are unable to hear from the banks. But definitely there is a disconnect somewhere, and any attempt at fishing out where that disconnect is for the sake of Nigerian economy, for the sake of Nigerians, I think is a good step in the right direction.
Okay, in the coming days, what would be your advice to Nigerians? What should they do with this extension? What should Nigerians do with this extension in the coming days?
Nigerians should take the opportunity offered by the extension, first to deposit the old Naira notes in their possession in the banks, believing that everybody that is holding the Naira note is holding the Naira note legitimately. So to deposit in the banks. Then for the banks, for the regulator, the central bank, and the operators, the commercial banks, to also do everything possible to monitor the exercise, to ensure that all the channels where new Naira notes should be dispensed, the channels are working. And again, a response to a question you asked about the level of infrastructural facilities is also a challenge. We know that the downtime in some of these channels is so high that failure rate in using alternative channels, online banking and so on, the various channels of payment, that at times lack of infrastructure, especially power, is a major problem. Internet service providers, also the quality of internet services in this environment is also a challenge. These are issues, I believe, after this exercise. These are issues the regulators, the operators, and other stakeholders in the channels should sit down to reappraise and to refix. There is no doubt that we still have issues regarding the quality of infrastructures powering the various channels. We still have issues with the attitude. Then we need to beef up financial literacy. I believe in those concentrated areas where it's still cash and carry business, if financial literacy is deepened in those locations, the kind of apprehension, the kind of pressure we have and that we are witnessing now may not be the case subsequently. I think these are issues, these are areas we need to address going forward.
We have just about 2 minutes to go or so. And it's as follows. The House of Representatives is saying that the CBN, while it has powers to redesign notes or to introduce new legal tender, does not have powers to refuse old money when presented on demand within the purview of Section 20, subsection 3. And they are threatening to issue an arrest warrant on the House of Reps. What's your advice?
Well, you see, the way things are, as I said earlier on, the most important thing is for the operators and the regulators to reappraise and see what could be done to ensure that we have. It's the problem of the logistics, that we address logistic issues. Whether we are talking about threat of arrest or not, if this exercise works seamlessly, at least I'm a living witness to what happened in 1984. So if this exercise works seamlessly, the threats, the accusations, the counter-accusations, the allegations, the counter-allegations, I'm not sure they will be there. Well, it is because we still have logistic issues affecting every stakeholder as far as this exercise is concerned. The regulator, the operator, the bank customers, the economy as a whole, the political leadership. That is why we are finding ourselves in situations where we are now pushing the matter with threats, counter-threats, allegations, and counter-allegations. It need not be. This is a professional exercise.
Well, on that note,
to be handled by professionals.
Yes, on that note, Professor Ajibola, I would like to thank you very much for your time and insight for joining us also on The Morning Show.